All right, welcome everyone. I'm super excited that you're here joining us online tonight for the first virtual Acorn Harvester training. My name is Zara Wiley, and I work as the Director of Urban Ecology and as a restoration ecologist for the Sacramento Tree Foundation. So I've been giving this training this will be my 11th season. This is the first time we've done it all online and distanced from one another. So we're going to see how it goes. Please have patience with me. I'm going to mess up this whole Zoom thing at least once or twice. So you can just laugh when that happens. Or if you're having dinner, you can have a little cheers when I make a big mistake. That would be totally acceptable. And hopefully I saw it looked like almost 80% of you answered no to, do you know a lot about oak trees? So hopefully when you leave tonight, that'll change. You'll feel like you know a whole lot more about oak trees. So a couple of housekeeping things first. If you're having any trouble, go ahead and use that chat box. My colleague Chow Vu is on the other line, ready and waiting to help you with any kinds of problems that you might have. And using Zoom, I know we're all trying to get used to this. Please use the Q&A if you have questions that you would like us to answer. It's a great place for us to store them. That's also somewhere that I'm going to check when I get to the end of a section. And if things get really detailed, I'm hoping that at the end we'll be able to actually open it up to live questions, but we'll see how time goes. Sometimes I talk a lot. Let's see. When we do get to Q&A, at the end, if I say we're going to have live Q&A, that's a great time to use your raise the hand control that you have, and we can actually allow you to speak. But otherwise, we're going to keep this in webinar mode just to keep things a little tightened down so we don't have to ask people to turn off their mics, and that we'll be less likely to have some sort of crazy Zoom bomb or anything like that. So one thing I'm going to take care of really quick. All right. Before we get too far into this tonight, I wanted to make an acknowledgement that the work that we're doing for this project is being done on the ancestral lands of the Miwok, the Nisenan, and the Patwin people. And I really appreciate all of the traditional knowledge that's been shared with me as we continue to learn about these amazing trees. And these folks are still present in our landscape and tending to these wonderful trees. So I wanted to send that acknowledgement and appreciation out there. All right, so let's get started. All right. So some of the topics that I'm going to cover tonight, we're going to start off with who we are, what and why we're doing this acorn harvest. We're going to talk a little bit nerdy in depth about the mighty oak tree, one of my very favorite trees. And then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the acorn harvest and how it works and what's important about it. So let's jump right in. Who are we and why do we harvest? So the Sacramento Tree Foundation, our mission is to grow thriving communities through stewardship of our urban forest. You'll notice that the word tree isn't in our mission and that communities is. It's because really everything we do is focused on people. And that's the same for this acorn harvest. So this is a really fun project, and it's actually really an appropriate one for this challenging situation we're in, is because it's something that's best done by a lot of people over a wide area within the same landscape. So this is like the introvert's perfect citizen science sort of project, which is probably why I decided to, get into this a while ago, because this is something that's great to do with your family or maybe your close little bubble of friends. But it's also something that you can do alone, and we don't have to be together in community. Although on a normal year, the acorn harvest is something in which we do have community gatherings as part of it. Let's see. All right. Moving on. So the department at the Tree Foundation that is focused on this work is the Urban Ecology Department. We don't use that a lot outside of our own office, but what it means is we're the group that's really focused on reforestation, habitat restoration, native trees, native plants, and urban ecology. That's really what we're focused on. So you don't see Chow right now, but he's part of the Urban Ecology Department. He works as a restoration field technician. And since it's a nonprofit, he also gets to do IT support sometimes. So thanks to Chow for being here tonight, and for everyone else from our department who's on the call. I think I saw that Patrice, our partnership and reporting specialist, is on, as well as other colleagues from the Tree Foundation. So thanks for joining us, and we couldn't do all this work without your support. All right, so The Urban Ecology Department and Reforestation, what does that mean? Well, it's actually a whole lot of stuff that all gets put together. And we're lucky today talking about the acorn harvest. We're right at the very beginning because it really starts with the seeds to get to the big trees that are in the landscape. So the folks that work hard in this department, they do everything from prepping the soil, harvesting acorns, planting trees, taking care of those trees, monitoring, mapping them, taking care of invasive weeds, planting other native plants, and doing work in our nursery as well. So it's really a very circular and large initiative, and it's one that on a normal year is very much propped up by volunteers. So we're going to do our best this year to make sure that the community can help us, and we definitely appreciate you being here and being part of this first step as we figure out this crazy year and how we're going to make sure we get it all done. So the Sacramento Tree Foundation itself has a whole lot of other programs and services that we do. And it said most of you, it looks like 70% in that early poll said that they have interacted with the Tree Foundation before. So I'm hoping that it's in one of these really various ways that you see up here. We have pictures representing our free shade trees program that we do. If you're a SMUD customer and you have not received your free SMUD shade trees, then you should let us know. You can always drop that in chat. We'll have someone call you and get you your free trees. We do a lot of community and neighborhood planting work. We have a couple of communities of focus right now. We're working in, let's see, Rosemont has a meeting, I think even tonight. So that might be a little bit of a conflict. We're doing really intensive work in South Sacramento, Rancho Cordova, and we're kicking off projects in both Folsom and the River Park neighborhood this year. So if you're interested in doing work with your community around trees, we have something for you and we'd love to hear from you. Same thing, feel free to reach out to us or drop something in chat. We'll get back to you. You might see a lady smiling up here. She's got lumber sticking out of the back of her car, which is really pretty great. It's a great way to travel with lumber. She's at our Urban Wood Rescue Yard, and she's really excited about the wood that she purchased. So this project is trying to divert trees from the waste stream and make sure that the carbon that's been sequestered in these big giant trees, when they can't be kept any longer, you know, trees do have a lifespan. Sometimes they have to be cut down. We tend to do it more often than we need to, but it does happen. It's best that we don't just chip them up or send them to the landfill. So the Urban Wood Rescue program is doing a great job of milling that wood into lumber, and they have great stuff. So they are open with special precautions right now if you're interested in checking out Urban Wood Rescue. Oh, I forgot to say, I should go back to Neighborwoods really fast. We do have some mini grants that are open. I think they might have just closed, but we're also looking at extra ways to seed projects in communities. So if you have a community and you want to do a project, we might even have money for you to do that project. Super exciting. Let's see, seed to seedling, you see some kids down there with some happy pots. One of the things that this acorn harvest that we're about to embark upon supports is the seed to seedling educational program. So this has been around for a really long time. The Tree Foundation started in 1982. And very early on, we decided that it was very important to work with kids to make sure they understand the beauty and the power of trees. So every year, we run a program in which we give third grade students and others who want to participate acorns and growing materials and a really nice curriculum that's actually free on our website so that they can grow trees in their classroom. And I've done this with my kids. It's really fun. Everybody loves to see their little oaks sprout. And even more fun at the end of the project, we take these oaks back and we plant them in reforestation projects. So seed to seedling is something that you will be supporting when you help us with this acorn harvesting project. Let's see, Save the Elms. I believe we just wrapped up Save the Elms for the year. This is another great socially distant citizen science sort of project in which we're keeping eyes on the historic elm trees in downtown and actually other parts of the city of Sacramento. So if you're interested in being part of that, next time we do it, go ahead and let us know. You get to learn all sorts of nerdy stuff about elm trees. So if you go to this class and that one, you get like the double pin for being a super tree nerd. So we hope to see you with that. And then lastly, of course, we do lots of advocacy and education in as many forms as we can. Right now, we're transitioning to do more of it like this, which is not what we're used to. So we're doing our best and moving on. So we hope that after today that you get really excited with this project, but also reach out if there's other things going on, because we're always looking to make sure that we're fulfilling that mission of creating healthy communities. All right, so let's get back to the acorns and where my heart lies, the acorn harvest. Why the heck do we do this? So every year we talk to a bunch of people like you. We convince them that it's fun to pretend to be human squirrels. And then we send them out all through the community to pick up acorns. And, you know, people do think we're a little nuts. That's my first nut joke. There'll be many more coming, I'm sure. But why do we do this? It's actually super important. One of the things that we realized is that we wanted to be using the very best materials, the very best trees for our projects. You can go buy an oak tree at a nursery nearby locally. There's quite a few nurseries that have our native oak trees in stock. But if you ask them, hey, where did the acorn for this oak tree come from? They don't know. And that's not the best practices, especially if you're focused on reforestation and making sure that you're actually supporting your local native oaks. So to ensure that we have these genetically appropriate and ecologically sensitively harvested and responsibly grown trees, we just decided we better do it ourselves. And so that's what we've been doing for about the last 10 years. And we've grown, close to 100,000 baby trees that way. Wow. And thinking about it, that's a lot. I haven't done that math recently. So we're pretty proud. This is a picture of our nursery. We've been following, best practices, which have been evolving rapidly in California for keeping clean nursery facilities. And this is a picture taken recently. You can see it's very industrial. We are in a business park. The next reason we do this is for the Seed to Seedling program. It's really a beloved program. I run into people about my age sometimes who say, oh, I did that as a student here in Sacramento. So it's a really touching thing to give a little kid an acorn. I don't know if you're like me, I always have them in my pocket. And it really connects people to this circular and very empowering cycle of one little acorn can grow into a big tree and make a big difference. So supporting them by harvesting acorns is a really important part of that. When you get a little deeper into it, oak trees, I like to call them biodiversity powerhouses. So if there's one thing that you wanted to do to support local biodiversity, you should plant a native tree. And most likely that's going to be a native oak tree because we don't have a huge variety of native trees here in the Sacramento region. It has to do with our climate and a couple of other factors. But what we do have are native oaks. And oak trees, they've been around a long time, close to 45 million years, I believe. And they have a lot of associations with wildlife, particularly native wildlife. So there's more than 350 species of vertebrate species that are associated part of their life cycle with the oak tree. And I'm talking about birds, I'm talking about all sorts of mammals, you name it. Squirrels. I saw a dusky-footed wood rat eating an acorn in an oak tree the other day. So it's really, you could also call it a keystone species for most of our woodland ecosystems in the Central Valley. Oak trees are where it's at. Even lower than that, there's 5,000 insects that rely on California native oaks. So I don't know if any of you have heard a lot about the insect apocalypse. That's been kind of a hot topic recently. And it's really true. Insects are pretty low in that food web, and it's important that we have insects if we want to have everything else. I'm kind of a nerdy bird watcher person too, and you'll find the best birds in the oak trees, even within the city of Sacramento and within the urban areas in the greater Sacramento region. So if you are excited to see native wildlife and you want to take care of it, having enough oak trees around is really important. This last one, there's lots of arguments going on about how we value trees. And I like to think that we can just value them for being beautiful and part of our world. But a lot of people value carbon right now. And within our region, the valley oak is the one tree that sequesters the most carbon. So this has to do with a lot of factors about how long-lived it is and how they grow. But they're also adapted to our local climate. So if you care about biodiversity and climate, yeah, it's all about oak trees, and the valley oak is a really wonderful choice. So I'm going to take a second to see if I have any other really critical Q&A stuff coming up. I don't. If you have questions while I'm going along, I'm gonna try and make sure I check that here and there so I don't blast on through past something and not come back. And I see we're up to 62 people. Wow, thank you all for being here. It's really exciting to have everyone on here to listen to me talk about my favorite tree. All right, the mighty oak tree. So this is going to get a little nerdy. I don't know if you like to take notes to remember stuff, you're welcome to. I'm also going to be making available later a Google Drive full of documents that you can check in with later so that you can remember some of this stuff, because we're gonna go a little deep. I apologize. Hopefully it's not too terrible, but we're gonna go there because it's important if you wanna do the very best for restoring and maintaining our native oak populations. All right, have to make sure I didn't forget anything. Okay, oh, yeah, I forgot one thing back on harvesting oaks and why we do this that I'm gonna go back really quickly on. The reason we do this is that, well, for two reasons. So oaks and their acorns are not able to be stored for a really long period of time. It's not like a carrot seed that you can like throw on your shelf and then like 10 years later you can grow some carrots. Acorns aren't like that. Acorns are live seeds. They're constantly losing moisture and slowly dying after they leave the tree. So even some of the hardiest acorns you can only store for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and that's kind of pushing it. So if you want to make sure that you have trees to plant, if you want to make sure you have trees to respond to catastrophes like wildfire and want to have local trees to plant, you really need to be harvesting acorns and growing them every year. Another thing is that California is a diverse place. So this is the kind of project that needs to happen locally or even regionally to make sure that that's occurring and that acorns are picked up and are available. So it's not great for, you know, my friends in Los Angeles to pick up Valley Oak acorns and ship them north, and they don't want mine necessarily too. So this is one of those projects and one of those things that are best done by a small group of people and kept local. So that's another reason that we're doing this. I really would love to see small groups of crazy acorn people doing this work statewide. All right, I'm gonna take a sip of water and then we're gonna get into the college stuff. And I apologize if anyone has any bad feelings about this. Oh, I see Martha raised her hand. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in the Q&A box. If it's tech related, why don't you go ahead and stick that in chat, and I will definitely get into there pretty soon. Oh, I see a bunch of hands going up. Oh, maybe I should stop for a second. Let's see what I can see. Oh, I saw a question. Oh, I think that Chow answered the question already. Way to go, Chow. So the training today is not the same as the one on Saturday. Yeah, thanks for answering that for me, Chow. I appreciate it. Oops, I went too far. On Saturday, we're actually gonna look at trees and talk about oak identification. It is a really hard thing to do, not in person. And so the Saturday training is gonna build on this one by actually looking at our locally native oaks and how to do the field work that we're talking about today. So I really hope that everyone can come to both if they're interested in participating. I also know there's plenty of people on here tonight that are just trying to learn, and that's completely acceptable. There's no, we're not gonna guilt you if you don't join us and actually harvest acorns for us. That's totally fine. So good questions. I'm gonna see if I can jump over to chat. Sorry, I'm not so good at this, people. All right. Oh, there's a question. Are there more oak trees in the Valley Oak, or are we only harvesting Valley Oak? I'm definitely going to get into that. I talk about the Valley Oak a lot. Oh, I did it again. Sorry, everyone. Because it's my favorite tree, it's also probably the most important for our region. Although we could argue over that, and if blue oaks are also more important, we could get in a really good discussion about that. So I will often say Valley Oaks because they're the monarchs of our Central Valley forest, and they are the main tree that we're looking to harvest from, but not the only oak, but we'll get back to that. All right, keep those questions coming. Let's get into classification, taxonomy. Let's talk about oak trees. So we're gonna start at the very top. So kingdom, it's a plant. Yes. We're doing pretty good. I'm going to work through this because I actually think it's really informative and interesting if you go all the way through. So next we have Magnoliophyta. Now this basically means angiosperms or your flowering plants. So, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Oak trees do have flowers. We'll talk about that a little bit more too. You can actually see them in this picture. This is early spring with leaves budding out, and you can't really see them, but they're there. I promise. They're really small. All right. Nagnolopsido, that means basically it's a dicot. So it has an embryo paired with 2 seed leaves. And if you show up on Saturday, I'll probably chop open some acorns because it's really fun. And I'll show you those 2 giant fleshy seed leaves and a teeny tiny little embryo in there. It's like this big. It's like the size of the head of a pencil that's going to grow into this enormous tree. This picture of this tree right here, this tree is like 7 feet wide. It's an enormous tree. Yeah. All right, we're down to order. Phagales, yeah, that's the order. It's a woody group of flowering plants. They're mostly monoecious, which means that they have both gendered flowers. They're not dioecious. There's some trees that there's female trees and male trees, but most of Phagales, they're both. So they have flowers from both sexes on them, which is really kind of helpful. They tend to have teeny tiny little flowers like this here oak tree. This is a valley oak, Quercus lobata. And also most of Phagales is wind pollinated. So that also becomes important to know later when we really get deeper into this. The family Fagaceae. Yeah, so this is the beeches and oaks. Let's see, check my notes. Oh, I almost said 9. There's 8 genera and about 1,000 species within Fagaceae. These are mostly trees, some shrubs. They have catkins, which are those teeny tiny flowers, the male ones that disperse lots and lots of pollen, which we'll talk about more. And let's see, oh yeah, they have cup-like nuts. That's what makes them Fagaceae. So the oaks and the beeches and yeah, all those trees that have these funky cup-shaped nuts are all in this family. So that's really helpful to know. And then we're going to get down to Quercus. Yay, Quercus. You'll notice if you've looked at all of the oak tree names, they all start with Quercus. And that's because that means oak. Quercus is oak. So we've settled there. We made it. You know that it's an oak tree because it has acorns, although there's a little bit of an exception, and we'll get to that too. So the oak family is really large. There's about 600 different species throughout the world, and they're actually still finding some now and then, mostly people chomping around in Mexico looking for cool new oak trees, which is my dream job. So that could go up over time. There's also probably some that have not been identified as their own species in Asia. There's a lot of oaks in Taiwan and parts of China. So there's probably more than that we haven't found yet. If you want to find your own species of tree, there's oaks probably to be found. Since it's a big family and there's some really big distinctions, we break it down into 2 subgenera. We break Quercus down into Quercus and Ceres. And now this has changed a little bit. If you took this class before 2018, I've been a little slow trying to make these changes because there's been a lot of arguing about the oak family tree and classification. But as of today, 2020, we've decided there's 2 big branches under the genus Quercus. There's Quercus and Ceres. And yeah, this gets really confusing because we use Quercus a lot for various different levels. So I'll try and keep that straight. If you get lost, it's totally understandable. All right, here we go. This is so cool. I love this. This is fairly new. This researcher, Mr. Manos, in 2017, put up this new global phylogeny, which is what this really cool circular diagram is in the middle. It's showing all of the oaks in the world and how they're related. And so after your subgenera, you end up with different sections of oaks. And this actually becomes important too if you are into oak conservation, acorn harvesting, and growing, and you're focused on reforestation or restoration. So we're going to get into it. Here we go. This is going to be exciting. So these are the sections listed on this diagram, and you'll notice that there's a section named Quercus. Now, if you've been following around, the genus for oaks is Quercus. There's a subgenus also called Quercus, and now there's a section called Quercus. Not confusing at all. So when people say oaks are confusing, we're starting to get into why. It's really confusing. It's probably not the best way to have done this, but it's what we've done. So we're going to start over here at the lower left with Quercus. You'll notice it's also labeled the white oaks. Now, this is because it's pretty crazy to say, you know, the section Quercus and the subgenus Quercus in Quercus, because you sound crazy. So we've gotten really lazy and we tend to just call these the white oaks. That's okay as long as you're really well focused in this, because later we'll learn that the blue oak is actually a white oak, and that doesn't make sense. There's also a black oak that's a red oak. So using colors can get kind of confusing. So I'm going to try as we get down to the actual species level to use the Latin names and the common names so that we can try and stay together. We'll do the best we can. We can't hold hands because we're on Zoom, but we'll try. So Quercus, the white oaks, this is the section Quercus. They have some really distinct features. Their acorns tend to ripen in 6 months, which is an important thing. Acorns can ripen from pollination to a ripe acorn. It can be 6 months to 18 months. So that's an important feature that we look at when we're looking at where oaks belong in the family tree. The white oaks are really where the best eating oaks are. I think there's maybe 1-2 people on here who are like, oh, I want to eat acorns. If you're looking to eat acorns, the white oak acorns have some of the lowest tannins in them. So they're the most palatable. I know a couple people who say, you know, oh yeah, you know, blue oak, you can just kind of eat it. It doesn't taste bad. I disagree, but it won't kill you if you want to try it. So I'm giving you permission. Watch out, sometimes there's worms. All right, let's see, other features that are important to know. It's in the Quercus section, or a white oak. There's no hair inside the acorn shell. It's not gonna help you if you're trying to collect it. You don't wanna bust it open, won't do any good. And then the leaves, they're quite often lobed, like the leaf that is on this diagram. That's why they use this lobed leaf. And it doesn't have any bristly points on the ends. Now that's not 100% true. I think I mentioned that the blue oak is a white oak. Baby blue oaks definitely have little pokey spines on them, but they are still within the section Quercus and are a white oak. Don't worry, I'll say that about a dozen times. All right, so we're gonna keep going clockwise, and we'll just kind of get through all of this because I think it's interesting. It also is important to understand how these are related and how they're not. So let's hop up, let's go to Cyclobalanopsis, the cycle cup or ring cup oaks. These are so cool. You probably won't see them here unless you really go looking for them, because this group of oaks is from Asia, and they don't look like traditional oak trees most of the time. I think they look more like fruit trees normally. They're often found in that kind of subtropical forested areas, and they're really neat. There's a lot of different species of the cycle cup oaks or Cyclobalanopsis. So we don't really have to worry about them. I'm just telling you about them because they're really cool. They also often have acorns that are in clusters, kind of like groups of cherries. This picture isn't so good, but if you really want to see some neat oaks from Asia, you can go to the UC Davis Arboretum in the Oak Grove there, which is the largest oak collection west of the Mississippi and has some cool stuff in it. That's my shout out for them. Hi, friends from UC Davis. All right, let's keep moving. We're gonna move into the Ceres and Ilex, or the holly oaks. I'm not gonna talk about them too much. There's actually not very many of them. They're evergreen mostly. They're from Eurasia and North Africa. There's some cool oaks in there. So they're kind of lumped off in their own corner. There's also cool ones in the UC Davis Arboretum if you wanna go see them. Check them out. All right, so now we've made it almost opposite from Quercus, the white oaks, and we're in Lobate, the red oaks. And I'm really excited about this because this is another section of the subgenus Quercus that we're going to be talking about today. Don't worry, I'm going to go over that again. So the red oaks, they're also in the subgenus Quercus, but they're in the section Lobate. And once again, you can't really just call them red oaks because the California black oak, it's in this group. Yes, the black oak is a red oak. The blue oak is a white oak. There should be jokes. Only oak people think this is funny, and I have no audience to laugh at me, so I'm just imagining. If you're groaning, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's the way it is. So the red oaks are really interesting. A lot of the acorns, they take up to 18 months to mature. They also have a lot of tannins in them. So this is a group of oaks where you can store them for a longer period of time. They're not really as good for eating, although you'll notice in California, there's plenty of red oaks that were eaten by, and are still eaten by Californians that like to eat acorns. And let's see, these have fuzz inside the shell. So if you want to crack one, I'm hoping I can get some that are mature enough for Saturday that I can break open and show you the fuzz inside their acorn shells. And they often have spiny leaves. So this leaf picture here, it's kind of similar to a black oak leaf. You can see it has little points on the ends. That's definitely true for the lobate oaks or red oaks we'll be looking at. For this project, they're mostly spiny. So it's a good thing to remember. We'll scoot down a little bit more to Protobalanus or the golden cup oaks. This is kind of a small group too, but some of my favorite California oaks that we are not focused on for this project, like the golden cup oak, fall into this group. So I'm not going to talk about it much, but they're pretty cool. We like them. And let's see, there's two little, you'll notice these crazy dotted lines at the bottom. We have Ponticay and Varieties. So all of the species that are in these groups used to be elsewhere in this phylogeny. We thought they were related to other stuff, but they're not. They're really distinct. And Varieties is really cool. This is like the southern live oak. If you've ever, been to New Orleans and looked at their amazing trees, they belong in Varieties. They're very distinct. And Ponticay is interesting. There's one oak, and I can't think of its name right now, from Eurasia that is in this group. And then one of our strange California oaks that if you ever look at all of the oaks from California, it looks really distinctly different. It's Quercus sadleriana, or the deer oak. You mostly see it up north in California. It is one of the two species that's in this own little strange group that is very genetically distinct. So yeah, I think what I really appreciate about oak trees is that they grow in the desert. They grow 4,000 meters up in the Himalaya. They grow everywhere, and they're really tied to people. Pretty much anyone you talk to from anywhere, if you ask them about trees that are very special for them, often they'll talk about oak trees. And so that's why I put some extra different names for oak trees on here. If you speak French or Spanish, pretty much everyone has their own word for oak tree. All right, I'm gonna take another quick break. I thought I saw some other stuff coming on. All right, I will get to some of that later. And yeah, all right, cool. We are gonna keep carrying on. Oh, I went too far, I'm sorry, everyone. Yes, I'll keep apologizing. I know I don't have to, but I will. So I went through this whole giant diagram, which was kind of intimidating, right? But we don't have to worry about it too much because in California, most of our oaks are in 3 different groups here: Quercus, lobate, Protobalanus, which we talked about, and then Ponticay. We only have to worry about trees in 2 groups: Quercus, the white oaks, lobate, the red oaks. Those are the ones we're going to focus on. So let's see. Oh, tan oaks. I put this note here so I wouldn't forget. If you spend time in the Coast Range, in that mixed coniferous forest with redwoods and stuff, you'll see a lot of tan oaks. So tan oaks are technically not in Quercus. They're in Notholothocarbis, which is a great word to say. I almost managed to say it correctly. They're a little bit distinct. So they do have acorns, but they're not quite oaks. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. They're very important for a lot of different places. There are groups, especially in Oregon, that are very focused on tan oak conservation. And they are an oak that is quite frequently eaten by people. All right. Chow is telling me there's questions in chat that I should check out. Let me see if I can find you guys before I get too far. We'll talk about Saturday. We're not doing anything in person. We're fully distancing. So there will be no meeting on Saturday. And yeah, I'm hoping that you can see my presentation. If not, feel free to chat or give Chow a call if you had that phone number on your email. Hopefully we can get you on. All right, moving on. So let's talk about California oak species. All right, so there's about 20 species. I'm gonna hedge because, you know, species is kind of a loose thing sometimes. In California, there's 9 that are super common. They're pretty much all over California. There's 7 that we call scrub oaks, and they grow in different parts of the state. They're very hard to tell apart unless you look closely at some of their features. So just because somebody says scrub oak to you, generally I would ask them for more information, such as a scientific name would be helpful. And then we have 3 oaks that grow pretty much exclusively on the Channel Islands, so you don't have to worry about those too much. Let's see if I had any other notes about what I wanted to go into. I did want to reiterate, we're going to go a lot deeper into tree ID on Saturday. So don't worry too much if you leave tonight going like, I don't think I learned how to differentiate them. That's okay. I just want you to understand the basic structure of how oaks are related and how it relates to our project before we really get into the nitty-gritty. So here we go. All right, so I've highlighted here 5 oaks. Hey, we only need to learn 5. We went from 600 to 5. I hope you're all feeling much better. So these are the ones that we need to know, the native oaks that we need to be focused on, because these are the ones that we harvest for our project. Every year, I think I mentioned earlier, we harvest about 10,000 acorns to support the work that we're doing. That's to support seed to seedling, our nursery propagation, and some direct seeding whenever we can. We like to plant oaks the natural way, and we could have a whole nother discussion about why we don't only do it that way offline sometime, or if we have time at the end. So I'm going to start at the top, Quercus douglasii. This is the blue oak. If you live in Folsom or Fair Oaks or anywhere, the foothills of California, you have blue oaks. They're lovely. I really like them a lot. They're some of my favorites. Next up, we have Quercus lobata, the valley oak. This is my all-time favorite tree, also who I masquerade as on Facebook, if you're a Facebook denizen. The valley oak is just amazing. They get huge. The largest valley oak in California is in the northern part of the valley, and it's just enormous. If you want to look up like champion trees, you can actually register trees if they're big enough. Yeah, huge. Valley oaks get huge. Quercus wislizeni. I love this one. This is the interior live oak. Now, definitely distinct from our coast live oak, but often mistaken. And pretty much every single time I've tried to buy or looked at nursery stock in Sacramento that's labeled Quercus wislizeni, it's not. So this is, and it's kind of a bummer too, because the coast live oak does so good in the regions where it belongs. Like, it's a great tree for there. But once you get far enough inland and when it gets super hot, the interior live oak, Quercus wislizeni, just does so much better. And honestly, I think it's a prettier tree. So yeah, we can argue about that one when we meet in person sometime. These last two, Quercus cologii and Quercus berberidifolia, these are both a little bit further up from the valley floor. We tend to find these in Placer and El Dorado counties only. We don't harvest a lot of acorns for these two, but I do like to keep them on the list. Actually, there's Quercus berberidifolia in Yolo County too. So I like to keep these on the list. I'd really like to see Quercus berberidifolia become a like native hedge plant. It's really more of a shrub than a tree usually, because it's really cute. It has really adorable acorns, and it's really wildlife friendly. It also can make a really good like screening hedge. So like I'm pushing for this one to make it big in the nursery scene. And Quercus cologii, I have to admit the last few years, most of the cologii that people have harvested for us, we have ended up not planting, but have ended up using for eating, because it's a pretty good acorn for eating. And quite frequently when we're coming to the end of our project, I have local educational groups call me and be like, hey, do you have any acorns? Because they know that I do. And so we've been really happy to be able to share them with, programming at like FEA Nature Center or the Yolo Basin Foundation. So we always want to have some Kelogi on hand. They're also kind of fun to grow. They're really pretty, and I like them. So, all right. We're going to keep going. We're doing good. Don't worry, we will have an intermission. Otherwise, I will no longer be able to talk, and this won't be very useful. So we're going to go back to those sections again and really look at those sections with the native oak species I've been talking about, so that we can get this really sunk in our brain, because this is what becomes pretty important. So in the section Quercus, in the subgenera Quercus, within Quercus, we have 3 locally native oaks that we are worried about for this project. We have Quercus lobata, the valley oak, Quercus douglasii, the blue oak, and Quercus bearbertifolia, the scrub oak. So I think it's kind of interesting that the tiniest oak on our list and the biggest oak on our list, they're actually in the same section. Pretty interesting. So all of them, they have these acorns that mature in about 6 months. They're usually pretty edible. Don't worry about the styles. You got to really get in there and look at oak flowers to understand the size of styles. Yeah, so this is Quercus. So I have some pictures here. The top 2 pictures, this is a valley oak tree, Quercus lobata. This is one in the city of Elk Grove. This is very common in some of our suburban development lands to have decided, let's not cut down the tree. So you'll go into these suburban neighborhoods and there will be a tree. Either somebody has an extra big yard and gets to be the lucky keeper of this tree, or they kind of have their own spaces. Valley oaks, I love them. They're very tall. They can be 100 feet tall, 100 feet wide. If you don't prune them, their branches will touch the ground and they make a really nice kind of weepy tree cave, and they'll sweep the ground underneath them, which honestly is super great for acorn harvesting if they've kept it shady so there's not lots of weed growth or it's been nicely swept. Yeah, I really like it when I am able to harvest from valley oaks that haven't been pruned for urban clearance or sightlines. They have the biggest acorns of any of the species we're gonna harvest for this project. And they have these bumpy, scaly caps, which are pretty neat. I'm trying to check my time because I can go on 6:47. We're doing good, yes. All right, valley oaks. Most people tell me the best way to remember valley oak is because the leaves have big valleys. Now this picture I have up here isn't great. This one seems very pointy valleys. But when you're looking at a tree and you're looking at the leaves to identify it, you don't want to look at one leaf, right? You can have giant leaves or little teeny tiny leaves. Leaves are super variable over a whole tree. So you want to look at a lot of leaves and look at what's in common. So on valley oak leaves, they're lobed. That means they have these indentations. And if you look closely, they're lobed and they have another bump on the tip. So they're like double lobed. So they're the valley oak. We'll look at that really closely on Saturday, and we'll look at a lot of leaves and acorns, because acorns are a great way to tell the species of a tree. So it's really helpful to do this time of year when there's leaves, trees, trunk, acorns to look at. The next one, the bottom 2 pictures on this slide are the blue oak, Quercus douglasii. And it's too bad we can't all go out and just stare at trees together, because the blue oak, they look kind of blue. Blue oaks are really tough. Like really tough. They're gonna survive when the rest of us are not here anymore, because they have these super thick waxy cuticle on their leaves and even on their acorns as well to help shield them from water loss in our hot summers. It's been hot, guys. They can resprout after fire. They grow really slow, which means their wood is really hard. They're just really tenacious trees. I like their acorns because they tend to be less pointy than the valley oak acorns. Sometimes almost even, they're kind of chubby, which I really like. And they have these little cute beret acorn caps on them. You can kind of see in that picture there. It's best to look at things fresh, but we'll do our best with pictures. So the blue oak is like second on our list for this project when it comes to numbers of acorns we're harvesting and from numbers of locations we want to harvest from. And then last, Quercus bearbertifolia, the little scrub oak. I didn't put pictures here, but I'm hoping that I'll have fresh material for you Saturday. And then, like I said before, I'll be putting up a Google Drive where you guys can actually pull up your own documents. There'll be more pictures there, as well as, you know, the internet has some great stuff. It also has some terrible stuff. So we'll make sure that you get as much as you need to try and figure out what is what. One thing that I should also mention, if you get involved in this project with us and you actually go out to harvest, is you're not going to be alone. we all have smartphones, right? So we've set up this project so that you pretty much have me and the team in your pocket at any time for tree ID. So we'll tell you about that near the end, but we're going to be here at all times to help you when you're like, this is a weird oak tree. Is this what I think it is? I'll be right there with my smartphone to say, yep, you got it. Woohoo. Or no, why don't you check this? So we're going to be right with you, but distant along the way. So let's hop over to the section Lobate within Quercus in the genus Quercus. So these are the red oaks. Remember, if we're being lazy and calling them by their colors, they're distinctly different. Their acorns usually mature in 18 months. It's not 100% true. The coast live oak actually completely does not follow this rule, and they're ripe in 6 months, but it's kind of an outlier. And then, yeah, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole yet. Later. They have really high tannin acorns, so they're really bitter. You can eat them, but you need to process them a whole lot more. And they have some fuzz inside their acorns. So the top picture, for those of you who know where Winston Churchill, I think it's a middle school is, it's on Chicken Ranch Slough, which is one of my favorite secret waterways in Sacramento County. That was Chicken Ranch Slough, for anyone who wants to check it out. The back part of the playground of the school actually goes down. You can see the creek terraces. It goes down to that slough. And on the second terrace, there's this huge interior live oak. I think it's probably the biggest one. Well, it's the biggest one in Sacramento County. There's some bigger ones in Placer. But it's really big. It's fun to climb. Don't go during school hours. There's apparently still people there. They frown upon tree climbing on their property. And so the interior live oak is great. It's an evergreen oak, which means that it always has leaves and is always dropping leaves. So I always laugh when people are like, I want a tree that doesn't drop leaves. I'll get an evergreen tree. What they don't realize is the evergreen trees just drop leaves all the time. The deciduous trees, some of them are fairly responsible and will drop their leaves pretty much within, a couple weeks. Yeah, it's one of those sad things. I worry about all the people that planted an evergreen tree hoping that they would have less leaves to rake. So Quercus wizlazeni, it's the interior live oak, and a lovely tree for Sacramento. It's really neat, and I can't show you this because I looked for pictures and I've never taken good pictures of this, I don't think, because they actually have two different leaf forms on the same tree. The younger growth has spiny margined leaves. They have points on them. They're very pokey. And then the older growth has these leaves where the leaf margin, the edge is entire. There's no pokies on it. So it's kind of cool. You're like, this tree has two different kind of leaves. That's an identifying feature. The acorns caps, all the acorn caps for Lobate, they're feathery instead of bumpy and scaly, like our friends within the section Quercus that are lumpy or warty. You can see that in the picture in the bottom there of the California black oak acorn. These acorns, they sit pretty far inside the caps, both for Quercus wizlazeni and Quercus cologii. And I love Quercus wizlazeni, you'll see later, because when the acorns are all the way ripe and mature, they have stripes. They're kind of tiger stripe acorns. So they're really beautiful. And then Quercus cologii, the black oak. I think I said before that you won't really see the black oak in California, in Sacramento. It doesn't like to be on the valley floor. It really likes to be a little bit higher in elevation and a little bit cooler. I know they've planted some like in the Arboretum at UC Davis, and they just look really pathetic and they're not very happy. So the California black oak, you'll often find it in the more mixed coniferous forests that you find in the Sierra Nevada. Oftentimes, if they're growing under canopy of the taller ponderosas and other pines, they get kind of leggy and stretched out. When they do have an open place to grow, they're much more rounded. The beautiful oaks in the valley in Yosemite are California black oaks, Quercus cologii. So that's a good place to see what they would look like if they weren't being crowded out by other trees. So they have these leaves that are also classic oak leaves. They have these big lobes on them, but notice there's really distinct pointy points on the end of the lobes. That's a great identifying feature for Quercus cologii. Also, this is a deciduous tree. The black oak loses its leaves in the winter. All right. I'm gonna, whew, I don't want to freak you guys out. I should go back and look at questions. We'll come back to that. Whew, it's gonna get tricky. All right. I have a question here. You planted oaks. You have potted oaks in your yard. What is the process to give into them? So actually, we will not accept your potted oaks. I'm sorry. I love that you're growing oaks, but unless we have really stringent controls on the location that your acorns came from, and if you've managed to follow phytosanitary conditions within your growing facility, which it's pretty much impossible at home, we are not able to accept trees from the public. I wasn't planning on mailing the slideshow. It's going to be put online within a Google Drive for you to grab, so you can definitely look at it later. And the red oak. So this is why I get confused, but red oaks is confusing. So red oak is a common name for the section lobate. It's just lumping them all together. We call them the red oaks, which tends to be these 18-month maturity. They have high tannins. They have fuzzy acorn shells. So we are collecting from 2 oak species within lobate, or the red oaks, Quercus luzeni and Quercus cologii. So the joke I was making is that black oak is a red oak, which is what the screen is we're looking at. And I see that Maureen can get black oaks from the Girl Scout camp. Awesome. That's great. We love it. I'm going to mark your guys' questions as done. If you see your question as answered and I did not answer it, put it up again. And I'll make sure that we get everything answered before we leave today. All right. All right, cool. I'm going to go back. All right. So we just talked about how these oaks fit in these perfect little boxes of being their own species. Unfortunately, there's also varieties and there's hybrids. And this is where this gets even more complicated for people. And for me, I learn new stuff and find new hybrids and varieties like every year. So let's do our best. So there's at least 12 oak varieties of the species that we listed, of those 20 California species. And a variety, it's this rank that's like below species. It's usually because there's a specific location that has something strange about it. The example on the slide, Quercus parvula var tamalpaiensis. Ooh, we can never say that one. On Mount Tamalpais in, north of San Francisco, there is a Quercus parvula that looks totally different, but is classified as part of the Santa Cruz Island oak. That's what they say it is. So it has its own variety. And so when things have been given a variety name, you'll see it written like this. It's the Q with the period is short for Quercus because we get lazy with all this Latin. Parvula, and then that var, tamalpaiensis, that means that it's a variety. So it's the same species, but there's something special about it. So keep a lookout for that. You'll notice if you're buying native plants, especially, there's a lot of varieties within native plants, especially ones that are used a lot in the horticulture or landscape trade. So you'll see that it has a variety name, which means that it's a little bit different. They're also almost always, for the flowering plants of that kind, they're almost all clones of each other. So you'll have to think about if you like having clones in your garden. And then there's hybrids. Now this gets fun too. So a hybrid tree has 2 or sometimes even more different species as parents. So there's some pictures here, and these are pictures I took because I'm pretty excited of finding these kind of unusual oak trees and then determining that they're hybrid trees. So the one in the middle, it's not a great picture. It's on my desk at work. It kind of looks like a valley oak, but it kind of doesn't. And after looking at this oak tree for several years and commenting on how unique it is, I really definitely got down and decided, this is Quercus bijolanensis. This is a Jolan oak, which is the hybrid between our friend, the valley oak, Quercus lobata, and our friend, the blue oak, Quercus douglasii. Now, we're not surprised that this happens, right? They're both within the section Quercus. They're both white oaks, and they grow often in places together. You have the valley oak and the blue oak together. Every once in a while, they have a kid together. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, and this is a mystery within the oak world. There's often, you know, barriers to fertilization, and they're not necessarily well understood. I mean, it can be, a barrier could be that the blue oak might release pollen a month earlier before the valley oak flowers are open or something. You know, there's all sorts of ways that can block pollen transfer between relative trees that are not within the same species. Because if there wasn't, they would all have melded together and become just one big lump species by now. But we still very distinctly have valley oaks, Quercus lobata, and blue oaks, Quercus douglasii. So they don't hybridize all the time, but it does happen. Hence, you can see here, this is a very unique hybrid tree, and we call it Quercus jolanensis, or the Jolan oak. So this is a recognized hybrid, and is one of the recognized hybrids in Sacramento. Now this is where we get confused. This is still a native tree. It has 2 native tree parents, and it happened naturally. So this is a native tree, it's just a native hybrid. So when you find a tree, an oak tree, when you're out mucking about and it looks weird and it just doesn't fit, yeah, that happens. It's very confusing. The next one, we'll look down there in the corner, these really cool jagged leaves, and it's got feathery acorn caps. Hey, that's a good clue. So this one down here in the corner, this is an oracle oak, which is Quercus by Morejas, which, now this is really cool. This is what happens when the 2 section lobate or red oaks decide to hybridize. So this is when the interior live oak and the California black oak somehow decide to have progeny. Now remember, one of them is an evergreen tree and one of them is deciduous, but they're closely enough related that they can hybridize. So they come up with this really beautiful, interesting oak tree called an oracle oak. Whoa, cool. This is a weird looking tree. You will find these, especially there's a valley kind of north of Auburn where there are a lot of oracle oaks, which is kind of to be expected because that's kind of where the populations cross over together. So again, this is a native tree. It's just a native hybrid. Yeah, we got some questions. I was expecting that. This is always where people go, oh my gosh, too much information. Let's see what I can find. Oh, I have a question. Oh, Francesca says, what kind of oaks have teeny tiny leaves in Elmhurst? You know, lots of oaks can have teeny tiny leaves. If you want to send me pictures, ideally, if you're going to identify an oak tree from pictures, you need a picture of the whole tree. You need a picture of the bark. You need a picture of a branch end with the stem and the buds. You need a picture of the leaves. You need a picture of the top of the leaf and the bottom of the leaf. If you can get me all that, I can probably tell you. If there's acorns, bonus points. Take pictures of those too. All right. I think that Chow might be answering questions. Woohoo! Awesome. All right. So we're almost to break, but now we have a quiz. Can you spot the hybridized acorn? I'd sing the Jeopardy song, but I'm not a great singer. I'm gonna give you all a minute to think about that. If you're with your family, you should argue about this. This is the time to have a family feud. If there's food, make sure you permission. My family throws food when we get in arguments. I highly recommend it. All right. So I'm going to answer my own question because this is a trick question. The answer is no, you can't spot the hybridized acorn. These are all beautiful pictures of our California native oaks and of species that we harvest for this project. The thing with acorns is that the acorn that you pick up off the ground or pick off the tree, it shows you what kind of tree the mother is. It cannot tell you who the daddy is. And the reason is because the pollen that landed on the little teeny tiny oak flower on that tree and pollinated it to make this acorn, we don't know where it came from because oaks are wind pollinated. So this is where the real catcher of our project comes in. We can't just run around Sacramento and pick acorns off blue oak trees and say, we're gonna grow blue oaks, because do you know what happens? Often we end up with very interesting oak trees because Sacramento is a great place and we've planted lots and lots of oak trees, a lot of non-native oak trees from all over the world. Super cool, right? It's really cool unless you're trying to harvest acorns for reforestation, then it becomes really hard. So this is basically what we're going to talk about in the second half of the presentation. as well as a little bit more specifics about how we harvest. We're going to get into pollination again and talk about how we make sure that we actually get native acorns with appropriate native tree genetics in a place like Sacramento where we love oaks and we planted lots and lots of them. So before I let you all go, we're gonna look at these pictures. So on the right-hand side, I have pictures of the acorns and the leaves on the trees. And then, actually, I don't know which side is which for you guys. And then we have the pictures of the ripe acorns. And you'll notice that there's really quite a lot of variety in colors, in sizes, and in shapes. The bright green acorns in the two hands, these are from Quercus douglasii. These are blue oak acorns. And that's the oak that's kind of in the middle, closest to the middle picture with leaves is also a blue oak. It's got these not lobed, very spatulate leaves that are kind of bluish in color. That's your blue oak, Quercus douglasii. So here's these tiger stripe acorns I was talking about. They're so pretty. This is Quercus wislezenii, sorry, there's not two eyes anymore. There's only one now. Oh no, I went crazy. We're not on intermission. Quercus wislezenii, and then the bottom corner picture is that tree. You can almost see on this picture, I was talking about earlier how it has two different kinds of leaves, some that are pokey on the edges and some that aren't. So that's the interior live oak, Quercus wislezenii. It's got these beautiful tiger striped acorns and two different kinds of leaves and is an evergreen tree. And then on the bottom, I think these acorns are most gorgeous. The valley oak acorns, they're the very dark brown ones in the bottom, Quercus lobata. And the picture of their tree is the lobed leaves up in the corner and the large green acorns on there. So remember, you cannot spot the hybridized acorn. You can only know what kind of tree the mother is. You don't know who the father is. So with that, we will take an intermission so that we can all have something to drink, stretch, grab some more food. If you have burning questions, throw them in Q&A. I'll start with that when I come back. And we'll take a 10-minute break at 7:06. We're going to start at 7:15. You only get 9 minutes. So thanks for hanging with me. I'll see you at 7:15. Okay, I am back. I hope everybody got something to snack on or something to drink. I definitely got some water, so hopefully I can keep talking. I'm going to answer a couple questions and then we'll get going. So I see Janice says that her neighbor has a giant 150-year-old oak. That is so cool. Um, if there are acorns present, you probably will know by now. Usually before the really good acorns start falling, the really kind of crummy acorns start getting shed by the tree. And this can happen pretty early in the summer. Um, so if you haven't been seeing, kind of weird looking crummy acorns falling off the tree, it might not have any. It is true. It does seem that at some point when trees get really old, they don't seem to produce as often. And it's actually really common for an oak tree to not produce every single year. So there's no such thing as a tree too old to collect from. And one thing that I've noticed that I haven't found anyone who studied this, so I don't have like a scientific report to back me up, but it really seems that before the big old oaks die, which is usually a process of 10 or 15 years, they usually have one or two really, really good acorn years where they dump a lot. It seems like they're like, all right, last hurrah. I've seen this happen quite a few times. I've been harvesting acorns in the Sacramento area for about 15 years, and I've seen this happen at least a dozen times with some of my favorite really big old oak trees. So keep an eye on it. And your question kind of ties in with Craig's. It sounds like Craig also has a beautiful oak in his yard. Yay, I'm so glad. And it has acorns, which is great. It quite possibly could be a valley oak. And I don't want to completely discourage you from finding places to grow your oaks. You might want to look into a little bit what other oak trees are around, and that's what we're going to talk about next to decide if it is reforestation quality material or if it's just local park planting material. Because just because in the center city or like land park neighborhoods, there's a lot of other oaks growing around, and it doesn't really matter much anymore. It's already this big crazy gene pool, and there's nothing we can do about that, and we don't really want to change that because it's kind of what an urban forest is. And that diversity and those hybrid trees, that's potential for evolution and for adaptation with whatever might be coming to Sacramento. So just because we can't necessarily use them for our reforestation projects, for which we have pretty high standards, like really high standards, it doesn't mean that you can't be providing great oak trees for your neighborhood or for other things. So thanks for those questions, Janice and Craig. And yeah, if other things come up, keep using the question and answer. That's really helpful. I have to tab like 3 extra places to see chat. So for questions you want me to answer, Q&A is great, but also feel free to use chat and to chat with Chow and other folks too. All right. I have one thing. Generally, the trees along the American River Bike Trail. So there's both a lot of valley oaks, Quercus lobata, and a lot of interior live oak, Quercus wislizeni, along the American River Bike Trail. If you've been out there in the last couple days and you're noticing acorns falling, that's from the valley oak, Quercus lobata. They are definitely starting to fall. Ooh, mast years. So Maureen just asked, do oak trees have mast years like olives? And the answer is yes. And it's really interesting because they tend to be synchronous throughout the entire state of California and maybe beyond. And there's a lot of people studying that and trying to figure out what that is. I don't think this year's a mast year, but this year seems to be pretty good. We've had a couple of kind of crummy acorn years the last several years. So I think it's going to be a pretty decent years. And we are definitely going to get to the acorns and oak death fungus here soon. What is a mast year? Hey, probably should have explained that. Thanks, Carmen, for calling me out. So a mast year is when all of the trees together put on a huge crop of nuts or fruit. It's a phenomenon that people have been noticing for millennia, especially in oak trees and olives and other trees that people have paid attention to for a really long time. Some people say the cycle is like, every 7 years or so, but it's not really consistent because it's been tracked long enough to know. But there are definitely years when they output a huge amount of seed. And if you think about it, like this is actually kind of biologically advantageous. If you can flood the system with seeds, you're more likely to have more babies. So yeah, great questions. And Marisol, I'm going to get to your question a little bit later. when we talk more about harvesting in particular. All right. Let's keep going. I'm going to try really hard to be done by 8. I'm a talker. All right. Pollination is important. So we were just talking about this before the break. And this article just made me crack up because I definitely have allergies, and oaks are a super high allergen for a lot of people. Yeah. So oaks are wind pollinated. All of us that have tree allergies in spring know about Sacramento oaks, and they make us sneeze. You know, unfortunately, it's kind of an unavoidable thing. There's no such thing as an oak that does not provide or produce pollen, so don't let anyone tell you that. People really love oak trees. They've been moved here from all over the world by lots of people. And also a lot of the oaks that people like and have brought to Sacramento have interesting characteristics like fall color, which are mostly oaks from northeastern United States. So we brought a lot of stuff here. Oaks are monoecious. We talked about this earlier. It means that they have both male and female flowers. They produce pollen and they also produce fruit on the same tree. Unlike like a ginkgo is a very common one to think about, where they actually have 2 separate genders. There's a female tree and a male tree. And actually that one gets more complicated. We don't have time. Oaks also have been shown not to necessarily self-pollinate. So it breaks my heart when I go to Elk Grove and I see that they saved like one giant oak tree and it's like in this sea of concrete and asphalt and buildings, because that tree has now been cut off biologically from everyone else, because pollen does travel, but it doesn't travel very far. It's been proven that non-native oak and oak cultivars can and do hybridize with our native oaks, which for our project, which is focused on reforestation and restoration, it matters. Depending on what you're doing, if you're looking for acorns to eat or you're doing some basic urban forestry, this doesn't matter as much. And actually a lot of people breed oak trees to make unique hybrids because they have interesting features like columnar shapes or funny fall color or, you know, other interesting things. So it just depends on what you're trying to do with your materials and how important it is. Please don't take random acorns to the Channel Islands. They will be upset. The reason that we care and that most people who are trying to conserve native populations care is because we don't really know what's going to happen with that. Oak trees live a long time, a lot longer than humans, and they could potentially, you know, become a weed species and extinct our native oaks by being super aggressive, or, you know, native wildlife might not be able to use them in the same way. So these are things we don't know that if you're trying to do true conservation restoration plantings, we don't want to play around and figure it out, because that would be, yeah, wouldn't necessarily be appropriate. That goes to like conservation ethics, which is also a really cool thing to consider and study. So the only way for us to make sure that we get these really good quality oaks is that we need to make sure they're physically separated from non-native oaks of the same section, which is why I went over oak sections so carefully. The physical separation we've decided to use for our project is 2,000 feet. People are like, that's a weird number. It is. There's only been like 3 studies on oak pollen and how it transports, and that's the best number that science can give us without completely eliminating our ability to harvest from a lot of really interesting places and remnant oak groves within urban areas. So for this project, the magic number, there will be a quiz, is 2,000 feet. And that's from an oak of the same section that is non-native. So I'm not concerned about native hybrids. Also, you know, the Jolan oak and the Oracle oak, yeah, they're totally fine. We like them. We actually, if you find some really cool native hybrid oaks, we would like you to harvest from them because that's fun. But otherwise, if we're harvesting for our project, we're going to make sure that we're harvesting from native oak trees that are physically separated by 2,000 feet from non-native oak trees of the same section. So when that comes up a lot, everybody's like, there's a cork oak here. Cork oaks are often that Ceres group. They were planted here a long time ago. They don't hybridize with any of our native oaks. So if you've got a bunch of cool native oaks and you've got an old cork oak because it was an old farm stand, that's cool. Don't worry about it. It's totally different. So when you're going to decide, hey, can I harvest for this project or for a reforestation project, I need to know within a 2,000 foot radius of the tree I might harvest from, Are there other oak trees? What kind are they? And are they in the same section? And here's the thing, I can't remember, there's 600 species, right? So this is where the internet and other stuff is really useful. The oak page in Wikipedia is actually kept up by some really crazy oak people and is really good resource. They've made all of the changes as we've changed the phylogeny over the last few years. So don't be afraid to use Wikipedia. If you're like, I don't remember what section this is, I do it all the time. I'm confessing right now. I have books too, but you know, internet. So this tree over here, isn't this a lovely tree? This tree's in Folsom. This is a valley oak, Quercus lobata. You should know, what section is that? Because this is one we're gonna harvest from. It's within the Quercus section of Quercus and Quercus, and is a valley oak. All right, now we're getting to the good stuff. Let's get to the nuts and bolts. This tree is not standing anymore. This is one of my favorites. Isn't it lovely? I think they took it down before it crushed the apartment building, so that was probably a good call. Harvesting locations. So I just freaked you out. You're like, I can't harvest anywhere. I don't know what I need to do to make sure that I don't have these unintentionally hybridized trees. So the best places to harvest are places with lots of trees that are at least 2,000 feet distanced from non-natives in the same section. And a permitted harvest area. I haven't brought this up yet. So I've been diligently working with Chow to make sure we can get permits in place to harvest for this project. Pretty much everywhere that is public land, it is not legal to take acorns without permission. People are shocked when I say this. They're like, really? Yeah, most people don't know this. There's also a bunch of places where it's really, really not allowed, usually preserves or other conservation properties. So one of the things that we do before we kick off this project with all of you is that we get permits to harvest a bunch of our favorite places. So that's something that we are currently doing and that we already have a list of. And these are places like the American River Parkway. County Parks is always kind enough to give us a free permit. And, you know, City of Folsom Parks, stuff like that. So I have a lot of harvesting locations to share with you if you join this project. I also really love it when people find new places that we can harvest, or on private property. If you have your own oak tree, you can harvest as many of your own acorns as you want. And if you have neighbors that have amazing oak trees, we have a really easy permission slip that you can hand them and say, hey, can I take your acorns? And they're like, yeah, and they sign it, and then we're totally covered. This is the really ethically responsible thing to do as far as taking seed from wild populations. And I expect this to really continue to be a bigger and bigger issue with people who are really focused on wildcrafting or otherwise taking plant materials from public spaces, because it's fine for a while, but it can actually become a problem. And there's been some big controversies over this in the last few years, mostly in Southern California. Within our project boundaries, yeah, so I know there's some people on this call from other places. Thanks for being here to learn more about oaks and harvesting. We only, for our project, accept acorn submissions that meet all of our super high standards from the 6-county region that we serve: Sacramento, Yolo, Sutter, Yuba, Placer, and El Dorado. I'm sorry if I said two twice, I probably did. If you know what SACOG is, we cover the same region. We've decided that's our region. If you're like just outside of one of those counties, go ahead and talk to us. We'll tell you if we can use your materials or not. We also don't want to take materials we can't use. Acorns are very necessary for their ecosystems. So yeah, all right, let's keep going. Harvesting protocol. So I have a pretty solid document about our protocol, which covers things like unintended hybridization by non-natives. That's the genetically appropriate part of this. We also are really interested in having a collection that is genetically diverse. So what this means is that we don't want to take all of our acorns from one tree. Yeah, we might get done really quick, but that wouldn't meet our goals of having the very best trees. So the best way to do this is to have a whole lot of harvesters. Hey, that's you guys. And to have everyone do a little bit of work. And so what that means is that when you go out to harvest, you might harvest the same location a maximum of 3 times, because there is also this kind of bell-shaped curve with acorns being ripe. You get really early ripening, you get the bonanza in the middle, which is usually mid-October, but we'll see this year's strange. And then it kind of trails off into November. It's good to actually have collections from various parts of the acorn harvest. We really like to have acorns from the species listed from as many different locations as possible. And we also want to make sure that we're not taking too many acorns from any one grove, any single tree, or any woodland area. And so our protocol says we're not going to take more than 5% of the acorns from any single tree, any grove, or any woodland. And that sounds like, wait, that's kind of crazy. It's actually, it's not too bad. What it means is that you go for a hike and hopefully you find lots of trees. And if you only find one tree and it has, 100,000 acorns, you only take 20%. So that can still be a lot of acorns. In a perfect world, each of us, when we go out harvesting, is going to go to an oak grove and is going to go for a hike and visit, hopefully 5 to 20 trees and take maybe 20 to 40 acorns from each tree. Unintended selection, you can read about this too. This basically means that we want to take all of the acorns that are healthy. We don't want to only select really big acorns. It's true, a really large acorn has more food, you'll have a bigger seedling. But if you have a really tiny acorn and it's also healthy, we want all of them. We don't want to, as humans, be selecting only the big acorns because that can change the genes that you have gathered while you're harvesting. That's what unintended selection is. So harvesting protocol, there's a pretty solid document about this. This will also be added into that drive for you to access if you want to read about it later and not just listen to me talk about it really quick. All right. Scouting. So we're going to talk about how you actually do this. So scouting is something that you can actually start doing right away. I consider this the first step of properly harvesting acorns, and that means to go to the place that you think you might want to harvest acorns and look for non-native oaks. See what kinds of oak trees are there. See if there are acorns present. See if there's anything dangerous going on. That's what you do for scouting. And for our project, if you're working with us, scouting is something we want you to report to us. It's super helpful for you to say, hey, I went to mile marker 15 on the American River Parkway and there are no acorns. Cool, then I don't have to go there too. So that's scouting, checking it out, and not necessarily harvesting. However, whenever I go out to scout, I'm prepared to harvest. It's just, sometimes you go out and you're like, yeah, there's acorns, they're not ready yet. That's also very good information that we want to know. We want to know, hey, there's acorns here, they're not ready yet. It's hard to be in 6 counties at once. That's why lots of information is great. So just to kind of go through this again really quick, what I want you to do is go to a permitted site. I don't want you to harvest willy-nilly and get us in trouble. All of our permits say that the people harvesting for us will follow our rules and are working under a permit. So that would be good. There's kind of some gray areas here, like roadways, Caltrans easements. They laugh when you ask if you can get a permit. They consider it garbage. So if you're on a roadway edge harvesting acorns, you're kind of in a gray zone. And I'll let you make your own judgment about whether or not you want to harvest there. It's usually dangerous with cars too, so not my favorite place. You've checked for your non-native oaks, woohoo! You want to make sure you're not taking more than 5%. Oh, this picture down here, all of these pretty shiny acorns all together. So this is 3 different species of acorns all mixed together in a bag. If you are super comfortable with this project and you like to have that challenge, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I recommend you bring several different bags to put the different species of acorns in that you've identified from the tree. Otherwise, you can get pretty confused. And when we store them, we always keep them separated by species. We want to make sure we're harvesting all sizes. That's that unintended selection thing. And then I want to encourage everyone to sort on site. So you can see in this picture over in the corner, that's one of my past acorn interns. We don't have interns this year, I'm sad. But they're sorting the acorns after we harvested them. So I always take a bag, like this cloth bag here. Cloth bags are great because you can wash them, they get gross. And then you're going to sort your acorns on site. And then we package them into Ziploc bags. I know plastic, I've been trying to get something different and reusable for years, but you have to be able to sanitize it. So it's been challenging. Yeah. So there was a question earlier about, can acorns transport the fungus for sudden oak death? And the answer to that is possibly. We have not had any sudden oak death, which is a Phytophthora. It's actually a kind of a funky water mold. It's kind of like a fungus. It's a really nasty pathogen for trees. We luckily don't have it in Sacramento because it needs a certain amount of moisture to continue to live, but it could potentially be on acorns and could potentially spread. So we, as for this project, assume that all of the acorns have touched the ground. They could be contaminated. And one of our steps in-house after you bring them to us is for us to clean the acorns before we store them. And that's pretty easily done using just a bleach dip. The thing is, if you're then going to store them, you also need to dry them a little bit, or else they'll either mold or start growing in your refrigerator, which is super fun. And then be safe. If there's questions, I'm going to get to them right after that, after this little section. So we only want to be harvesting healthy acorns. When you're out in the field, if you know that something is cracked or has holes in it or is squishy or hasn't fallen out of its cap, then we want you to leave it there. Acorns are super important as a food source. And even though we're going to try and take a very small percentage from a large area and lots of different trees, you could potentially have negative impacts on wildlife by taking lots of acorns. This is especially true in places where there was recently wildfire. It's a little bit controversial about harvesting in places that have burned over because food can be extra scarce after that. Although it's usually necessary to do so in order to have trees for reforestation. So you can see up here some of my, hi Janice, one of my amazing volunteers. They're harvesting straight off of the tree. So that's ideal, right? It's really best if you can pick them off the tree, but this does not happen very often. It's much more likely you're going to be like my other volunteers over here scrabbling around. They're actually harvesting walnuts. Shh, don't tell in this picture, but they're picking them up off the ground. That's usually what is going to happen. And so I highly recommend, if you can, if you have some smaller humans to take with you who are good at bending over, make them pick them up and bring them to you, and then you can check them out. And if they look like these acorns on the bottom, if they're cracked, if they have lots of holes in them, you can just check them aside. Don't even put them in your bag. And then you're going to sort them again before you leave to make sure you only take what you really need. One note on acorns with holes. You'll see in this bottom picture, this one has a lot of holes. This is from the acorn weevil, which is an acorn pest that just lives naturally in our woodlands around here. They do damage the seed, but they generally don't stop it from germinating and growing. So we try and avoid holes, but we are going to end up with acorn weevil larvae in our acorns, even if we harvest perfectly. So don't super freak out about holes. Also, once you pick them and then we sort them and put them in bags, there will still be weevils in some of those acorns. There always are. So don't worry about it too much. Hey, here's all those acorns again. I'm gonna see if I have any questions. Come on, where's my question bar? Oh yeah, so this was Maricel's question. Can acorns carry the sudden oak death fungus? And the answer is potentially yes. So everyone who is properly harvesting seeds and taking them into a phytosanitary nursery facility, like hopefully everyone should be doing if they're growing for reforestation, they are sanitizing the seeds before they plant them to avoid that. And I don't want to go off on that. We don't have time to talk all about Phytophthora, but if you guys want to have another talk about sudden oak death and Phytophthora, we can make that happen. All right. Whew. Here we go. So once again, here are the acorns that we're going to be harvesting. I don't want you to stress about color too much. So as long as the acorn comes out of its cap, the acorn is ripe enough to be harvested. It's very satisfying to pick them off when they just kind of pop. It can happen when they look fully green, like these ones over on the right, or they can look all the way fully mature and colored like these ones on the left. And actually these blue oak acorns, I only have pictures of the blue oak acorns being blue. Once they hit 100% perfect ripeness, they're almost purple. And since they have that waxy coating, much like the rest of the surfaces on this tree, you can like actually rub the wax off and they're very shiny. They're really, really lovely. And I'll try and remember to put a picture add a picture in so you guys can see that if you revisit this to look at the different species and the way the acorns look. Sorting and storing. So I'm going to talk about this again because it's important. I'm also going to reiterate with more detail on Saturday when we really go into the tree ID and how to effectively do this project on your own. I always bring a blanket. This was clearly pre-COVID. Notice we're all just hanging out together with other humans. Gosh, I miss that. So if you have a friend, if you have a big family or a pod, like this is a great activity. Bring snacks and either wear gloves or bring hand sanitizer if you're going to eat your snacks before, you know, after sorting, because acorns have been on the ground. We always ask that you look over them one more time before you leave the site, so you're not taking materials off site that could be used by wildlife or could potentially grow a new tree wherever you're at. And then over here, oh, I miss my happy interns. You can see that we use Ziploc bags because we end up storing our acorns until at least January for certain projects. And we are very particular about how we store them so that it's easy for us to use in the nursery. We count 40 acorns into each bag. We label it with the species, the location it came from, the date they were harvested, who picked them up, and then 40, if there's 40 in the bag, there should always be 40. And then we add 2 more acorns because we have learned in the last 11 years that we cannot count to 40. So we always count to 40, put 40 in and add 2 more. This also works well in the nursery or for seed to seedling. If there's 1 or 2 that ends up having a bazillion weevils come out of it, it's really sad for the seed to seedling kids. If they're like, here's your acorn, and they get the one that is like rotten or has lots of holes, it's good to have a couple extra. Sorry if you can hear my cat, I apologize. So I understand that not everyone may have a smartphone. However, if you do have one, I will let you know it'll make this a lot easier to stay in touch as we are all physically distant. We are using the app Slack, and we'll invite you after Saturday, or if we communicate with you otherwise that you want to be part of our project. This is really helpful because it can help us manage 6 counties worth of harvesting and, 40 or 50 people doing separate things so that we're not over harvesting any specific place, that we stop gathering a certain species when it's time, when we have enough. This really just helps us make our project run smoother and easier for us that are trying to organize. So if you don't have a smartphone and you're like, I am not going to do that, that's totally fine. You can reach us over email and my cell phone, you can call me. I'm always available, and we'll do our best to make sure we can support you even without this technology. If you are going to use this, we hope you will. It's super fun. We only have a couple channels. So the Acorn Harvest announcements, this is a locked channel that only Chow and I will be sending announcements on. This might be things like, hey, we need someone to go here. Let us know if you're going. Harvesting locations, this is where we talk about locations. This is also a place that we frequently will post, hey, I heard there's acorns here, who can go? And then somebody will reply by thread and say, oh, that one's mine. Okay, and so we can all coordinate and not all be on top of each other doing the same work. Report activity. As soon as you're on, you'll see some of our veteran acorn harvesters are already reporting activity. Anytime you go scouting, anytime you harvest, anytime you go somewhere and you realize there's no acorns, you just report it here so we can keep track of where we are. And then tree ID and help. This is a great one because everyone can come along as we are doing tree ID from pictures or acorn ID because you can post a picture and I can reply usually pretty quickly. I do sometimes not if I'm doing other things about what it is. And then everyone can see and we can learn together. So this can be really fun. And then lastly, there's direct messaging. If you want to ask a question that you think is kind of embarrassing, you can just send it straight to me or straight to Chow and we can chat about it. So here's some examples of what we've done in the past. It's really great because I can send you pictures of maps and stuff if you don't know where I'm telling you to go. So this has been really helpful for trying to coordinate a whole bunch of people over a large area. All right, I left this kind of near the end, but this is the most important thing. We need you to be safe. One of the things that you most frequently find where you find acorns is poison oak. If you don't know poison oak, you need to learn it immediately in its various forms, because I don't want you all getting poison oak. It's terrible. This is a picture of poison oak. It has oak-like leaves, which is why it's called poison oak. It is not in Quercus. It's a toxicodendron. The second thing, sadly, within the Sacramento region, running into transient encampments has been really problematic. So I highly recommend that you, if there's anything off about where you're going, don't go. The acorns are not worth it. And we do highly recommend that you go with a friend if you can. If you have a friend, I hope you have a friend in your bubble, or a family member, or a big dog. All those things are great for mucking about in remnant oak woodlands. Other things we've run into: wasps, dogs, snakes. In parts of our harvesting area, you may have rattlesnakes. They usually like rocky places, so make sure that you look before you stick your hand somewhere to pick up an acorn. And please watch out for things like wasps and dogs. And then this last one, this is one that is super critically important that I don't know if you know about, but especially our friend the valley oak and Quercus lobata, when she has a very large load of acorns, is prone to this late summer drop where a very huge portion of that oak tree will fall off. This happens pretty frequently. This actually happened, I think, 2 falls ago when I was out in the woods with a class. This happened nearby, which was pretty scary. This doesn't happen silently. So what happens before a big oak tree loses a limb is it starts shouting about it. It'll creak and crack and groan and make all sorts of terrible tree noises for like 15 or 20 seconds before it drops a huge limb. So if you're in the forest and you hear a tree talking, you need to get out of the way. There's, one thing you can do, it's best to know if you can tell where the sound is coming from and get away from it. The other thing you can do is hug the tree, usually up close to the trunk. When the branches come off, they tend to go out. So that's usually the safest. If you had no choice, you didn't know where it was, I would get up against the trunk and cover my head. I don't want to freak you out, but it does happen. It actually happened in the middle of Davis, in the middle of the farmer's market a couple of years ago. There's a video on the internet if you want to. Somebody managed to video record what happened. So if you actually want to witness it, there's a couple of videos out there. And it, like I said, it doesn't happen instantaneously. It makes noise. So please don't have your headphones in bopping along in the woods. It's probably not safe. I'm gonna see if anybody had a question about safety. Haha. I will get to you, Jeanette. Okay. There's so much great information about oak trees. I know this is too much for you all to look at right now. What time is it? Oh, it's 7:48. I'm doing okay. This University of California Oaks website is great. They recently updated it. It used to be the Integrated Hardwood Range Management Program, which was a terrible name. So now it's just California Oaks. They have a lot of really good stuff up there. California Oak Foundation, of course, the International Oak Society. It's mostly their fault that we have to deal with this crazy taxonomy. So become a member and heckle them like I do. If you have not been to the Shields Oak Grove, you should go. I hear it's busy on the weekends. I'm really into oak galls. We didn't have time to talk about this. Maybe we will on Saturday, probably, because we'll find some. It's those crazy things that grow on oak leaves and oak stems that look strange. And there's a cool book. Oh, I have it. It's called Plant Galls of California and Other Western States by Ron Russo. I think this is like really expensive online right now, but it's really cool. He spent years taking pictures of all of the various oak galls. So I often take this with me when I'm mucking around so I can figure out what I'm seeing. I think the most common ones you might see in the city are like the little red Hershey kisses on the valley oak leaves and also on the blue oak leaves. And then earlier in the summer, I don't know if you saw the little bouncing jumping bean galls. The jumping galls come off usually midsummer, and that's very common in our area too. Learning to ID trees is hard. A couple of books, if you like books. For walking around, I kind of like, this is Trees Among Us by our friend Matt Ritter. It's California focused and it's kind of urban focused, but there's really good stuff about oaks, including pictures. This is a little book. It's not quite as hefty as carrying around some other ones. So if you like books, A Californian's Guide to Trees Among Us is pretty good. It's helped me with some crazy, like some of the pines that I can't identify. There's good charts in here. If you really want to nerd out and you're really liking oaks, you have to get this. This is Oaks in the Urban Landscape by a bunch of California oak amazing people. And it has some really good stuff like some leaf ID, which is pretty uncommon to have it all in one place. There's a whole section about harvesting acorns, which I'm right in line with, so I feel good. There's also a lot about tree care in here. So if you have a really big native oak and you want to take care of it, this is a good book. What else? Okay, let's keep going. I do like books. I hope you do too. Oaks of California. This is older and more scientific, nerdier, but is a great book. I think Effie Yaw was still selling this in their bookstore. If you want some light reading that's just beautiful, Secrets of the Oak Woodlands by Kate Marienchild. This is really lovely. She talks about the creatures and does like little synopsis of different things and has beautiful artwork. So this is a great book for anyone who's feeling oaky. And then if you want to eat acorns, you can buy this book from Sue Ellen Ocean. She lives somewhere up in the foothills and is a funny lady. I've talked to her a few times. It's called Acorns and Eat 'em. I think you can get some of it on the Oaks Foundation website, but you know, I like to buy people's books when they spend time to write a whole book about eating acorns. She's got a bunch of silly recipes. It's super fun. I would love to plug Acorn Day at the California State Indian Museum, but I'm pretty sure it's not happening this year, which is really tragic because they have a lot of cultural practitioners that come and share about how their family eats acorns to this day and how they harvest and prepare them. So when that comes back after this horrible pandemic, go to that. It's really, really fantastic. And that is an amazing museum. So yeah, I think those are all the ones I wanted to rep. What's next? Excellent. So what's next is we want you to participate in Saturday's training if you can. If you can't, reach out to us, let us know. We're going to try and record that one too. It'll be really helpful to get you settled into like, okay, I can go out and do this on my own. I will reiterate that we are not hosting any in-person events. Our organization has decided it is not ethical for us to do so right now. So we're holding off on that. It is possible some of our partner organizations may be holding some very small group harvesting. So I will let you know about that when it happens. The museum I just talked about was the California State Indian Museum, which is located at Sutter Fort and is a gem. If you have not been there, I'm sure it's not open right now. They also have an amazing library in the back if you want to know about historical California. Okay, so if you come to Saturday's training, after that, you're gonna get a participant survey. This is where we're gonna make sure we get the right email address for you. We're gonna find out if you wanna sign up for Slack. We're going to ask you to sign that you're not going to steal our harvesting locations and harvest under our permits for a company or other than a nonprofit, or yeah, we want you to promise that you're not going to make money off of the free information we're sharing. And there's also going to be a volunteer waiver so that you're officially a volunteer. And then after that, we're hoping you'll harvest for us. The harvest starts now. The acorns seem to be a little early this year. The blue oaks are always early. They're the first. They often start dropping at the end of September right now. The valley oaks usually wait and are a little later, although I'm getting reports that they're already falling, especially along the American River Parkway. And then our friend, the interior live oak, and the scrub oak as well, Quercus bearbredifolia, as well as the black oak, you can usually harvest into early November. So there's a little bit of time for us to do work outside. And how can we find a location near us to harvest? So that's something that we'll be in pretty much constant communication on Slack. If you let us know, or by phone or by email, if you let us know where you are, we can definitely give you some suggestions. And we're also hoping, like I said, that you might find the next greatest place for us to harvest and actually diversify our harvesting areas. If you know of a place that you think might be good, but you're not sure like what's around there, and if there's maybe non-native oaks, reach out. give us that information and we will help you decide if we can harvest there or not. That is what we're here for. All right, I answered that one. I answered the museum. Go support them. It's really awesome. Okay. And hey, I think we made it to the end. It is 7:55, so I managed to get it all in there. I know it was a lot of information. I just want to thank again Chow for being my tech guy, my wingman back there. Thank you so much. And for all of you for spending 2 hours that you could have been doing anything else, learning about oak trees. I hope that you learned more and that you feel like you know more than when you started. If you do use social media, feel free to be my friend on Facebook. I'm Quercus lobata. I only post tree stuff. There's no personal stuff. There's no politics. It's a good place to learn about trees. I'm also on Instagram, and the hashtags I'll be using are Acorn Harvesters 2020. And of course, if you do anything, you can hit us with Sac Tree. We love to see it, especially now when we can't see all of you in person. It's really, really nice to be able to see people through pictures and on Instagram. The Brantleys, it is totally okay that you knew nothing before this training. I actually think it's amazing that you spent time to come join us to learn something new. And I hope to hear what your favorite thing was. I see the chat blowing up a little bit. I'm gonna see if I can get that open too. See lots of thank yous. You're so welcome. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna hang on for just a few more minutes. If you've got some more questions you want to hit up in the chat or in the Q&A, if you desperately want to talk about something, and you can always raise your hand. We can see if we can let you in, see if we can use our technology. Otherwise, I hope to see you all Saturday. You should be getting an email with the Zoom link for Saturday soon. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you all online. Well, the book titles. Yeah, I'll make sure that I'm probably going to just post the whole presentation so that you can look on it and get all that information. There's going to be additional documents for you to access, which will be posted Saturday for everyone who comes on Saturday as well or reaches out to us and is like, hey, I can't come Saturday, but I'm definitely interested. We want to make sure that we're sending our info out to the right group. So be in touch. And yeah, I'm so glad that your troop's going to collect. Yay, take some pictures. We really love it. This is a great activity if you have kids. Like I said, the people who can bend over better than some of us, because you can send them out to pick them up and then you can just be quality control, which is super fun. And it's a wonderful time of year to be out in the woods. Yeah, great. I see lots of thank yous. You're so welcome. So welcome. See you on Saturday. Bye, Patrice. All right, I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation. I didn't see any hands. Did anyone desperately want to talk on our webinar? All right. Well, it looks like we are done then. Feel free to jump off. I'm going to hang on until you're all gone. Oh, Craig is raising his hands. Craig, I'm going to try and let you speak. Hold on. I think I can do this. I'm trying to learn how to use this better. I'm going to allow you to talk, Craig.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm a little ignorant on the technology here.
No problem.
I do have a question. I think I sent it to you, and I apologize. I just a little befuddled. But I do have an oak tree in my yard. It's beautiful, and I've gathered acorns from it. I think it's a valley oak, but I'm wondering if anyway, I've got them and I have them available if they're of any value, but I think you're trying to get pure species and I'm not even sure how to tell if this is pure.
Sure. Well, there's a bunch of ways. So you can send me pictures on whatever platform you like, or if you want to like email me your address,
Sure.
You know, I am able to come certain places, certain times. I don't have a ton of like out and about availability, but yeah, send us whatever you can send us and we'll try and figure that out. I mean, it would be great. I've been surprised sometimes by even in, you know, very much in the middle of the city, we do find trees that we can harvest from. So it's always
I think this followed me home one day from a trip up in the, you know, from wherever the heck we were. So, but at any rate, so can I send you my address? Would that work?
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't want to do it here, you could privately chat it to me or Chow, or you can email me or whatever works.
I don't mind giving it to you right now if that helps.
Okay. Hey, Chow, can you write? He's ready to write.
Okay. It's 1435 1435
Mhm.
Oregon Drive. And the zip is 95822, if that helps.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to go
I've
ahead.
got a bunch of acorns I've already gathered too, so you're welcome to have those.
We have the railroad walkway
here
that has tons of acorns.
My wife is saying the railroad has a lot of acorns. You know,
Okay.
there's an old railroad that goes through Southland Park, and there's a lot of acorns on that.
I know exactly where that is because they've been talking about turning that into rails for trails for a long time, and we're on the list to help plant trees for that if it ever happens.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun. All right. Well, thanks, Craig. Be in touch. We will help.
Thank you. I look forward to helping put some trees in the earth.
Yes, let's do it. More trees.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, Craig. We will talk soon. Okay. I'm gonna. Anybody else need anything? Let's see. Oh, I see Eric's still hanging on. Hey, Eric. Woohoo. Glad you made it. All right. Well, I think that is all I have. If there's no more questions or raised hands or anything urgent, I'm going to call this a great evening. It's 8:02. Have a wonderful evening. I will talk to you all Saturday. You can always reach out to us by email, phone, smoke signal, invite us over, socially distanced, of course. Thank you so much. Take care. Good night, everyone.